Tonight we're going to read Little Miss Dotty. Little Miss Dotty showed up in the last book we read, and I decided when I looked through the book that this was the one I wanted to read because I liked the first page that has her house on it. How's that? Isn't that a nice house? Okay, let's read about this. Welcome to Nonsense Land. You may have heard of it. It's where the trees are pink, orange, and brown, and the grass is blue. But I have a problem with the grass being blue because it looks green to me. But I'll show you in a minute and you can decide. Where dogs wear hats and birds fly backwards. And where little Miss Dotty lived in the middle of Whoopee Wood. Okay, so what do you think? Is that green grass? She claims it's blue. Nonsense Land really is quite the most extraordinary place. If you ever come across a worm wearing a straw boater and wearing a bow tie, you'll know you are in Nonsense Land. And I think a straw boater must be a hat, because I had not heard of a straw boater before, but that has to be what that is. He looks like a happy worm. And if you ever happen to catch sight of a pig playing tennis, you'll know exactly where you are, won't you? That's right, Nonsense Land. There's a pig playing tennis. Doesn't look much like a pig, but whatever. One morning in January, little Miss Dotty was having breakfast, a bowl full of marmalade with milk and sugar. Wow, marmalade with milk and sugar? While she ate, she was reading the newspaper. She took the Nonsense Land Daily News every day and always read it while she ate her Dotty breakfast. Something in the paper caught her eye. She stopped eating and she started reading. There she is with her newspaper propped up. The headline read, Nonsense Cup Winner. And underneath it said, this year's Nonsense Cup for the silliest idea of the year, a green tree, was yesterday awarded to Mr. Silly by the King of Nonsense Land. Runners-up are Mr. Muddle and Mrs. Nincompoop. Next year, continued the story, the Nonsense Cup will be awarded not for the silliest idea, but for the dottiest idea of the year. Ooh, look at Miss Dotty. She likes that prospect for next year. The dottiest idea of the year, little Miss Dotty thought to herself as she popped a spoonful of marmalade into her mouth. I bet I could win that Nonsense Cup. After breakfast, she set off for a walk in Whoopee Wood to think about this and that, but most of all, to think about that famous Nonsense Cup. There she is with her pink trees and maybe her blue grass. On her walk, she met Mr. Silly. Congratulations on winning the cup, she said to him. Oh, it was nothing really, he replied modestly. Little Miss Dotty thought about telling him that she was going to enter next year, but then she decided not to. There they are. Pretty fancy shoes he has on. January passed, and February, and spring came, and the blue grass grew. But could little Miss Dotty think of an idea? She could not. She couldn't think of a single Dotty idea. She looks pretty perplexed, doesn't she? Summer came to Nonsense Land and went without a single Dotty idea in mind. And the leaves started to fall from the trees. And then, one afternoon in late November, little Miss Dotty thought of her idea. The dottiest idea ever. Oh, boy. think they're going to tell us what it is right away. The year ended, and January arrived in Nonsense Land. A huge crowd gathered as usual in the square to see who had won that year's Nonsense Cup. The king of Nonsense Land mounted the specially built platform, and a hush descended on the crowd. Oh boy, what can it possibly be? Ladies and gentlemen, the king announced, again it is my pleasure to announce the annual winner of our famous Nonsense Cup. As you know, he continued, the cup will be awarded this year to whoever has had the dottiest idea of the year. And the crowd held its breath, just like I'm holding my breath. There's the king. One of which, the king went on, has been entered by Mr. Nonsense. What? The crowd looked as Mr. Nonsense held up his Dotty idea for all to see. A television set with no screen. It's for people who don't like watching television, he explained proudly. Oh my goodness, the crowd clapped. However, continued the king, we have an even dottier idea from last year's winner. That was Mr. Who? I've forgotten who it was that won last year. But he's put in something again this year. Mr. Silly, that's who it was, Mr. Silly, triumphantly showed his invention to the crowd. It was a clock. If you look at it in the mirror, it tells you the right time, he announced. The crowd cheered, and Mr. Silly felt sure that he was going to win the Nonsense Cup for the second year running. Well, that's interesting. But, continued the king, and Mr. Silly realized that he wasn't going to win after all. Okay, there's. Oh, look! I'm holding it up, and I can see, because the screen is reflecting it like a mirror would, I can see what the time is, but I don't think you can you? A silly clock. But, said the king again, we did announce that the Nonsense Cup was to be awarded for the dottiest idea of the year, and this year's winner has provided us with, he paused, 999 dots. Little Miss Dotty held her breath and blushed. Hooray! Roared the crowd. Follow me, said the king. Oh, there's Miss Dotty. Is she holding her breath because she doesn't know whether she won or not? The king and little Miss Dotty led the crowd through Whoopie Wood to her cottage, and there they stopped and they stared. I don't blame them. That's worth staring at. I'll show you in a minute. Little Miss Dotty had spent the whole month of December painting dots all over her cottage. Hundreds and hundreds of different colored dots. 999 to be exact. Little Miss Dotty had counted them very carefully. That's a lot of dots, remarked the king. That's a lot of dots, remarked the king as he handed over the Nonsense Cup, and the crowd cheered. Thank you, your majesty, she replied, and she blushed with pride. Oh, look at this house. How's that for a house? That's pretty cool. I like that. Wow. Oh, one last thing. If you are as good at counting dots as little Miss Dotty, you'll be interested to know that there are 195 small letter I's, small letter, not big letter I's, but small letter I's that have dots over them, in this story. And there are 195 dots on the top of all of these small I's. I should know because I put them there. And that's the end of the book. So that was a good story about Miss Dotty. And I like her house. And I like her pink trees. And her blue-green grass. Good night.